Hello there, Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore, and time for another whiskey tasting. And this is one of those videos, Mondays and Tuesdays, I'm going to start doing extended videos over on Patreon at the club level. So if you end up wanting to see a longer version of this video, I like to tell you up front so you don't watch through all of this and then have to listen to some of the stuff repeated when I go through it the second time. Today I'm going to be doing a tasting of a whiskey that is... I wasn't very satisfied with it when I first had it, but I bought it anyway. I got a liter of the stuff. What am I going to do? So, this is Old Crow I'm talking about. I added some dark rye Basil Hayden to it because that's another whiskey that I was not a big fan of. It's good to pour over ice cream. It's a little too heavy-handed on the port for me, and no rye. The rye is just buried underneath. And so I poured some in here. Well, it went from being a watered down Jim Beam to being a watered down strawberry Jim Beam. So it wasn't really a great experience. So I thought, why don't I try adding in another Beam Suntory product into it? And so we're keeping it all in the family here. And this will be coming from Old Overholt, which is a bottled in bond rye that I have. And I thought maybe this will add a little bit of spice to it. You'll notice I have my laptop with me. The reason I have my laptop with me is because Old Crow is one of those whiskeys that there's a lot of lore around, mainly because Dr. James C. Crow, we don't know much about him. There's not really a life story written about him. I hear somebody's working on one. I don't know how they're going to research it and tell it because I've looked and he is just a hard guy to track down. They call him the father of the guy who came up with the sour mash process. That is not true. They were doing the sour mash long before Dr. James C. Crow. He just was a very clean freak, and he actually made better whiskey because he took more care in the process because he was a graduate of, from what I understand. Now, I say this because it has been repeated so many times by other people that, you know, they repeat it enough, it becomes fact. They say that he came from the University of Edinburgh. I'm gonna have to reach out to them and ask him if he's in their roles, because actually in the episode I just did talking about Irish whiskey, the last episode, we were talking about, who's the guy? Oh, Aeneas Coffey. And Aeneas Coffey, the guy who invented the column still, well, he didn't invent it. He again, like Dr. James C. Crow, perfected it. But there's talk that he did go to Trinity College, but they don't have him in their records. So did he? Really? Or is this another piece of lore that's going down through history? So I'm doing a project for a whiskey company, and I'm going to post some stuff on the Wikipedia page about this brand history. And so I haven't really done any editing on Wikipedia before, so I decided to use the Old Crow profile as my experimentation to go in and right some wrongs. Because if there's anything that frustrates me, it's that they get the quote wrong. First of all, they say General Grant was a fan of Old Crow. There's no proof of that anywhere. And then you end up with people telling this quote. Well, the quote they're telling is wrong. So I went into Wikipedia, I changed it. I got the quote to what the New York Herald wrote in September of 1863, and I footnoted it. So it's in there now, and it should be a lot more accurate than it was before. And I also mentioned the fact that Old Crow has never been named in association with, not back then. Now they do, but I mean, maybe it got connected with him because it was one of the most popular brand name whiskeys out there at that particular time, which might make sense. But what frustrates me is that lazy movie producers go out and they read a Wikipedia page and then they take that as gospel and they go forward with it. And I got a bone to pick with the History Channel because they should know better, but they, I don't understand how you can have something called the History Channel and not have a researcher who goes lighter, one level deeper than Wikipedia. So if you watch the Grant series, and I notated this in this profile, if you watch the Grant series, you will see him sitting there with a bottle of Old Crow. I didn't bring up the fact that Old Crow was likely not bottled at that time. Very few whiskeys were. And it has a label on it, and it says Old Crow. And we know that he likely, if he drank Old Crow, he drank it from a barrel, and it was probably put into a bottle at his saloon, but it was probably just a plain Jane bottle rather than anything fancy. So I've changed it. Hopefully in the future that myth will go away and we can get on. I felt like I had to, though, keep that in there. I did have an urge to just pull it out completely because it's not associated with Old Crow at all other than the lore. But in the way I wrote it, I said, the lore says, and then there's no association with Old Crow, and that the quote isn't even probably real. And so if you go listen to episode 10, season 1, I go through the whole story there. And actually, what Lincoln said about this, because he was asked about the quote. And so fascinating. Anyway, what I've done with this whiskey today is I've taken this watered down strawberry jam Old Crow, and I have added some Old Overholt to it, because if the idea of the Basil Hayden was to be a rye with a port, and I think port and rye work really well together as long as you're not dumping sherry or port straight into your mixture. Let's be a little bit more subtle about it. And I was really disappointed that it still tasted watered down, so I thought maybe if I put 100 proof rye whiskey in there, it would work. So let's do a tasting of a mashup of 3 Beam Suntory products: Basil Hayden Dark Rye, Old Crow, and Old Overholt. 2 of the olds together in this glass. Can't tell you the proportions, I just mixed a little bit in. So I will play with the proportions a little bit. I still don't know actually what the proportions are in Old Crow, so I'll never have a definitive, but isn't that the fun of an infinity bottle? So on the nose, it's just really light. I get a little leather. I don't get any of the notes that I would expect. I don't get rye, I don't get port, I don't get that strawberry note. Cheers. I'll tell you what, it helped. It really helped. It got rid of the one thing that I really could not stand about that blend, was that it still tasted watery. This actually has added some body to this whiskey. I don't know if it's the best rye for this, but it actually improved the whiskey a decent amount, and I would drink this. It would be one of my, it's got a nice little strawberry note to it still. The rye still isn't really poking its head through. This is probably slightly more rye than Basil Hayden Dark Rye, but it's not as heavy-handed on the sherry side of it. There's a little bit more whiskey note to this. So, I don't know, it's actually not too bad. And I'm thinking what I might do is I might take my rye whiskey infinity bottle and actually knock this down with that and see what it's like, rather than using the Old Overholt, which I like, and I really don't want to waste a bottle of something that I like, even though this is $25, something in that price range. So another bottle potentially saved, which is great because this has been sitting underneath my cabinet in my I don't drink area. I tried another whiskey in it that I was hoping to salvage that I paid $80 for. It's such a bad whiskey that just a couple drops of it ruined this. Just absolutely crazy. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and hey, leave a like if you did, if you learned something during the video. What do you think about Wikipedia? Do you trust Wikipedia? Do you feel like when you want to find the answers that you're finding the right answers there? By the way, this is my Woodford Reserve tie. It is, it's got horseshoes. It's really a Kentucky Derby tie because it's got Woodford Reserve, mint julep, and horseshoes on it. And I'm going to be talking to Elizabeth McCall coming up soon, who is the new master distiller at Woodford Reserve, taking over for Chris Morris, who has decided to go to an emeritus status. And so that will be coming up soon. Watch for it, because hopefully I will have a video version of that. And subscribe if you'd like to watch more, and especially if you want to see that video coming up. Until next time, cheers and Slainte. Not bad. Very drinkable.